What I'm going to be talking about is what we've done over quite a long period now to transform the way we run my business, Cougar Automation. I came to come and start running Cougar Automation 15 years ago. It was already an established business and it was a fairly normal business at that time. I still think it's a fairly normal business, but other people tell us that we do things in a slightly unusual way now. I'll let you be the judge of that as I tell you about this. But what I want to do is basically tell you the story and some of the implications of the changes that we've made within the business. And then hopefully we'll get through that in enough time that if you're interested, you can then ask a few questions or we have a bit of a chat about it, because it's probably better to get your point of view on things rather than just listening to me going on for a whole hour. How does that sound about? Okay? Right, so my business, Cougar Automation, it's an engineering business. I joined it, as I say, 15 years ago. It was very bad timing to buy into the business and to go and start running it, because it suddenly had got itself into a lot of trouble at about the same moment. It had been expanding very rapidly, and as a result of that, it had got itself into all sorts of trouble. As a consequence, it was losing vast amounts of money. There were new people coming in very rapidly because it was expanding so quickly, which meant that customer satisfaction was falling off a cliff because the new people coming in didn't really know what they were doing. They were being taught by people who'd only been there for 6 months. The whole thing was getting into a really, really bad state. And essentially, we'd reached a point where we should have gone bust. And my first year was a bit of a roller coaster ride, trying to prevent banks from closing us down and all of these things that you heard in the paper that RBS were doing. I sat in a big meeting room in central London with RBS, and they offered to take a third of the company off my hands to extend the overdraft for another year and things like that. So we had some interesting times. We got rid of them, refinanced the business, and somehow managed to struggle our way out of what seemed like a certain death situation. And then we were sitting there at a point going, what are we going to do to go forwards? Because it wasn't really much fun where we'd just come from. And the business had got there through the previous owner and manager of the business, pursuing a policy that seemed very successful. The business had been growing very, very rapidly. But it all went wrong. It came off the rails. And we were determined that we were going to find some way of running the business more sustainably. And that's really what everything that we've done has been about since then, is to make a business that's really sustainable. And we came up with a very simple idea to do that, which was basically to do such a good job for our customers. We do project work, project engineering, software sort of work for customers. We want to do such a good job that they only ever want to use Cougar Automation after they've used us once. That was our kind of cunning plan. The only problem was we had absolutely no idea how to do this. And this is about 2003 in time I'm talking here. Now, obviously, because I've been asked to come here and speak, it's probably not too much of a spoiler to say that we managed to find a way to increase our customer satisfaction. This chart shows right back from the very start of it, customers being asked to rate us on a 10-point scale, and these are what percentage of our project customers were giving us 7 or more out of 10. At the time, we thought 7 was a pretty good score. I now think 7 is a pretty lousy score. And you can see when we started, it was less than 40% of our projects. Customers were giving us a 7. So I shudder to think now we were getting a 6 or worse for the majority of our projects. But over a very short period, only about 5 years, we drove that up to the point where what we thought was a good level, 7 out of 10, pretty well all projects, all the time we were achieving that. And what I'm particularly proud of our people for doing is we've managed to sustain that year on year on year after that. It's not just been something that we sort of cooked up and did quickly and then it all fell by the wayside. We actually have managed to sustain this now for a very, very long time now. So, as I said, we had absolutely no idea when we set off how we were going to do this. I mean, talking about it afterwards, I could say we had a great plan and wasn't it fantastic, and we executed it well and drove customer satisfaction up. But we absolutely didn't have a clue how to do this at all. We didn't know how to get started. We sat around in board meetings talking about things like how on earth are we ever going to get our cynical engineers to accept the fact that they could deliver great customer satisfaction to the extent that customers were delighted and only ever wanted to work with us. They'd think we were absolutely potty. But luckily, at about this time when we were going round and round in circles, we had the good fortune of meeting this guy. Anyone met Derek Williams or know Derek Williams? No, he runs a great business called the WOW Awards, which is completely dedicated to helping businesses deliver great customer service. But when I met Derek back in 2003, he was running his own accountancy business. And he'd hit on the great idea we'd hit on as well, just a bit before us, that delivering great service would allow him to to build a great and successful and profitable business. And it had done that for him, and as a result, he was going round doing much as I am now, talking about what he'd learned. And he'd researched lots about customer service, and he'd deployed a lot of this in his company, and he'd become very good at it. And actually listening to Derek, when I went to hear him speak, I thought, yeah, you know, we can do some of that. This is all pretty simple stuff. But interestingly, when I look back now, the things that have stuck with me and that have made the difference to the business that he said at the time was nothing to do with customer satisfaction at all and how to deliver customer satisfaction. It was actually something quite different that stuck with us. The first one is a little phrase Derek had, rationalising doing nothing, RDN. And basically what it's saying is, you know, we come to events like this, don't we, and we all think it's fantastic, and we hear all these great things that we could do and that other people have done in their businesses, and then we get back to the office and we sit at our own desk and we talk to our colleagues, and then we start coming up with all the reasons why we can't do this ourselves, why it won't work in our business. You know, their business was different, their situation was different, we couldn't possibly do it. And we're very, very good at that, I think. Well, at least I'm very good at that. I don't know what you're like in your businesses. So he said this thing, rationalising doing nothing. We went, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're sitting in board meetings, talking to ourselves, saying, how on earth are we going to get started? And that has stuck with me ever since. So whenever I catch myself now going, well, yes, but it's different here, because I immediately have that in the back of my mind, and that pulls me up. And the other thing that he taught us was don't try and change one big thing. Don't have some great big master plan. Try and change lots of little things. And this was something else that was really stopping us from moving forwards. We thought we had to come up with some great idea and plan and concept that would allow us to start moving forwards. And we had to build a sell list of people. And actually, what we learned from Derek was actually that stops you from actually doing anything. In fact, it's worse than that, because you stop actually doing anything. It's a bit like expanding Heathrow Airport, isn't it? You don't do anything, and then when you finally do, it's some great, enormous plan that's probably going to run into the buffers when you try and implement it. And of course, we never see that happening in companies, do we? That you know, out of nowhere, a big change plan comes up, and then 2 years later, it's all been forgotten about. That's unheard of. So, of course, improving things by little bits is quite easy to do, because you don't have to have a big plan. You just have to say, well, we'll do this, and we'll do that, and we'll do the other. And if a little thing fails, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make me look such a fool, so I don't mind trying it. So that was the other thing. I've come to turn this into, in my own head now, thinking, what's the smallest thing I can do to make a change? So, first of all, stop myself from rationalising doing nothing. Secondly, what's the smallest thing I can do to start going down the road? And that, to be honest, is the biggest thing that Derek ever gave us. Because his business was different from ours. The way we do customer service in software and engineering is very different to an accountancy. But it's this that got us going down the road. So we started talking about customer service as being 10 out of 10. So we went out of the boardroom and started talking to our people and saying, we're going to deliver this fantastic service. And we started doing tiny things that nowadays, you're looking back, you think, what was the big change that started things happening? The big change was we started doing something. We started saying to people, it's about great customer service and why that was going to make such a difference to us within our business. We started surveying our customers using a 10-point scale, which is where the 10 out of 10 that we have there comes from. We didn't have any money because, you know, we'd almost gone bust, so we printed ourselves up some homemade posters and we stuck them around the walls in the office, all about service and things to do with that. So they weren't horrible, cheesy slogans that you get on these American posters with nice views that try and inspire you. They were actually things that related to what we did with our customers and put them up on the wall. So it was some very, very simple things that we started doing. And oh, and yes, we also entered some customer experience awards and came pretty well last as well, so that was good. But we'd entered them because we wanted to say customer service was important to us, And the other thing was they gave a benchmarking report, and we were very hungry to find out what it was that we could do to improve. So unlike maybe a more traditional approach and what we would have done before we'd met Derek, we might have waited till we thought we were getting quite good at customer service, and then we'd enter an awards program. No, we entered it at the start when we thought we were lousy, because we wanted to signpost that this is important to us. That's why we're doing it. So we're doing all this kind of stuff, and we're engineers. I'm an engineer, and kind of people stuff passes us by as engineers. We don't really get people. But eventually, the penny kind of dropped about a year in or so that maybe there was something to do with our people that was in part of this mix of what we had to do as well. It wasn't just sticking posters on the wall and saying we wanted happy customers. And we started to come up with things like this. So this is an internal slide that was generated about a year in that we used inside the business. I should explain, we call ourselves Cougar Cats within Cougar Automation. So we're not, this isn't a slide referring to our pets when it says happier cats. This is us. This is the people that work in the business. In the past, our business, and to be honest, our competitors, had been characterized by being scared of customers, because when the customer rang, he was going to give us a hard time because we were probably letting him down, and he was probably justified in giving us a hard time. So we try and avoid communicating with the customer, which would make the customer even more annoyed. So we're in this sort of downward spiral, which never happens in other businesses, I'm sure. And we kind of realized, yeah, actually, if we want happy customers, well, we need to make sure our people are happy, and then they'll deliver better service, and then the customers are a bit happier, and then we won't be scared of them, and our people will be happier. And we want to start building these upward virtuous circles in there. And that meant we started having to look at the way we treated people rather differently. So instead of me getting annoyed when people were going over budget on projects, I had to start accepting that sometimes projects went over budget and it wasn't a problem. So actually, funny enough, a lot of the changes in how we treated people started challenging people like me and other leaders in the business to treat people differently. It wasn't the individual's fault that things were happening, we discovered. It was just stuff that was happening. And if actually we trusted people a bit more, suddenly things got better and the spiral started going up. So this started to make a very big difference to us. And again, this is another internal slide that we generated. We started saying, hang on, we could pull all this together and try, we're engineers, you see, can we put this together and make some sort of sense of it? So we got 10 out of 10 that we want. We want happy cats in the business. And we also had come up with this idea of eliminating all waste within the business. So we were only doing things that were going to deliver value for the customer. So let's stop doing things that are just internal things for our own purpose, and companies, I think, are very good at that. Let's try and focus on things that actually are going to deliver some value for the customer. And like most things that we did, it turned out to be actually rather a good idea. It was just by chance. There wasn't any plan behind this. This kind of just evolved out of the stuff we were doing over the first couple of years. But we got to the point where this, which has become our vision, is something that is allowed people to be set free within the business. It's a very practical tool. So we started when recruiting new people, we started saying to them, look, this is how we want you to work within the business. We don't really mind what you do, as long as you're doing those things. You know, trying your best to deliver 10 out of 10 to the customer, making sure that everyone else in the business is happy. So it's not a right for an individual to be happy, it's an obligation to make sure everyone else is happy, is what we realized it was. And if you do it so you're basically only delivering value things for the customer and not doing things that the customer isn't interested in, we're going to be doing good, efficient, profitable work as well. And this started to allow us to set people free, because we didn't have to micromanage them now. We would recruit people and we get into people that were already with us to start to follow that. And that became really central to what we were doing. And also, well, in parallel with this, it had probably started in the crisis when we'd been trying not to go bust. We'd started becoming increasingly open with everyone in the business, and this accelerated. And I remember I got a lot of resistance for this when we were trying not to go bust, because my fellow directors were worried that we'd scare people in the business if we told them what was really going on in the finances. But people know anyway, don't they? And if they don't know, they certainly fill in the gaps with something that's usually worse than what's really going on with the rumours. So we'd already started, and we carried on down this path of basically being completely open and transparent about everything. And essentially, the way it is now is there's nothing in the business that I know that isn't known by everyone else. And also, it's not just that everyone else gets the same information that I get within the business, but they get it in the same sort of time frame and the same sort of detail. So all the finances, all of the satisfaction stuff that we do, the internal surveying of people's, all of the external surveying that we do for customer satisfaction, all of that information is available to everyone. We've worked very hard on developing an intranet, so it's all available for everyone. We put it out in very digestible forms. We provide training for people, particularly on the financial aspects of things, so people can understand it. It's all very well chucking a load of numbers out there, but if people don't know what they mean, it's not really being very open. So everyone in the business knows pretty well everything there is to know, and in a lot of detail. So here's an example of, this is just a screenshot of an email with customer satisfaction results in it. So every time, on every project, we survey all the people in our customers that we've been working with, and whenever the customer fills in a survey form for us, which only has a couple of questions on it, so we get a very high response rate, an email automatically goes to everyone in the business with everything that they've written. It's not mediated in any way, so if the customer's written something nasty about us or written something good or whatever they've said, it immediately goes to everyone's inbox. So it keeps us in touch with the customer, even though most people haven't been working on this project, don't know who the person is, but it's just reminding us all the time that actually it's the customer that we're there to serve. And I was quite shocked, sort of a few years after we'd started doing this kind of thing, talking to one big company, and they were saying that this was a divisional manager or something, and they said, oh no, we don't see our customer survey results until they've been through some central system, and we get some report 6 months later which has some aggregated figures in it. And I said, and then do the rest of your people in your division ever see that? Oh no, they never see it. It only gets talked about by the management team. And I'm thinking, you know, you people don't know what's going on. So we provide this straight through. So that's an idea of transparency. Obviously, we aggregate it all as well. But as it's aggregated, all this stuff, again, is going immediately on the intranet. So when I get to see the aggregated data, everyone else does, because the system's completely open. I also mentioned we entered some awards. 2004, we were pretty well last. 2005, we were amazed to win, which says something about the speed that things were changing. In fact, when I received the phone call from the awards organisers to say we were shortlisted in the last 3, you know, they said they'd been pretty amazed at how we'd moved. They'd dug our old entrant form out from the year before to see what was different about it. And then not only were we shortlisted, they came and visited us on site, and as a result of that, they decided, yeah, we were the best. And that was a really big turning point for us. Not only was it a great pat on the back for everyone in the business and sort of big affirmation for everyone, but the best thing was that we got plugged into a fantastic network of other companies that delivered great customer service. And they were all very, very generous in sort of showing us what they did and teaching us and helping us with this. And Helena in the room somewhere, I think, yeah. Old friend Helena, Bromford Housing, they were one of the companies that were, you know, astoundingly helpful, invited us along and spent loads of time showing us what they did. And another company that we came across through that network was Happy, a company that deliver amazing service. They, at the time, a computer training company, they still are, but they've added people training on top, because people started saying, can you not give us training for our people, because your people are doing fantastic things. And they were doing emotional intelligence courses. So you can imagine that, engineers going on emotional intelligence courses. That's a good fit, isn't it? So I sent myself as the guinea pig, because that's the kind of way we started to learn doing this. And I came back and had a quiet word with a couple of other people who I thought would be well respected among the engineers and might be game for it. And they went along and tried it as well, and came back and thought it was fantastic. So they spoke to everyone else about it, and before we knew it, we had a waiting list for this. I mean, we didn't have much money, so we couldn't afford to send many people on this course. But next thing, we had, you know, a waiting list, which turned out to be a brilliant thing, because anything that's scarce, people queue up for. And once a bit of momentum got going behind it, people coming back saying, one person came back and said it was life-changing. Someone, one evening, we work in a completely open plan office, and one evening when everyone else had gone, I was there, and one other person, and they sidled up to me, and they thanked me for saving their marriage, because they'd been on this course. So with that kind of feedback coming back from it, we've never ever sent anyone on the course, and I think pretty well everyone in the business has been happy to do their EI course. And boy, as engineers, do we need it, finding out about, you know, what makes us tick, what makes other people tick, and how to actually get on with each other. And in the past, we used to think it was all about being better engineers. Nah, it's not about being better engineers. Our competitors have got engineers just as good as us. We just have engineers now who understand a bit about who we are and who other people are, and that's what's making the difference. But good as that wasn't the best thing that we got from Happy. The best thing we got from Happy was that Kathy, who was doing the EI training, introduced me to this book. She insisted that I read this book. Strengths, Now Discover Your Strengths, Gallup Strengths Finder, ringing any bells? Yeah. This is 11 years ago now, so it was probably relatively new then. And I suspect many of you in big businesses probably have done the strengths thing and forgotten that you've done the strengths thing. In fact, I was talking to someone from a business that I won't name that had done all this strengths thing about 10, 11 years ago when we were doing it, a very big business. And this person in HR who wasn't there at the time, was subsequently come in, knew nothing about it. Oh no, we don't do strengths, nothing to do with it at all. And yet that was the big thing at the time, 10 years ago for them. For us, it absolutely transformed everything we did, completely transformed. To the sense that 3 months after being introduced to this book and me introducing this book in the business, our profitability trebled, and it stayed trebled. So that's an impact on the business, and it came about from this. And basically, it's a ridiculously, embarrassingly simple concept, this strengths concept. I think people sometimes try and make these things complicated because they think it has to be complicated, but for us it's really, really simple. We're all very different, aren't we? Some people like going to football matches, and other people like reading novels, and you find some people that would hate one and love the other. Some people at school loved doing maths and hated doing French. You might guess which way round I am on this one, being an engineer. So we're all very, very different. And yet, at work, we tend to be treated as being roughly the same, just more intelligent or more capable and not. And if someone's not so good at something, all we've got to do is train them a bit harder in that. We'll do a competency assessment and find they're weak in this area, and we can fix them and change the person with some training. I shudder to think about the amount of improving of other people I've tried to do in the past. And the horrible things I must have done to people as a result. This is much better. We just accept that we're all different, and some people are good at some things and not so good at other things. And the magic is matching people up with stuff they're great at. Don't try and change them. No point. Won't work. Just get them to do things they love doing. It's as simple as that. And we all know that, don't we? I mean, there's some stuff where I know what I'm like at work. I sit at my desk with something that isn't playing to my strengths. I don't want to do it. And I'll get up and I'll walk around and I'll go and make a cup of coffee because I don't want to settle to it. I'll sit down, I'll check my emails rather than doing the thing that isn't playing to my strengths. I'll go off and make another cup of coffee. And then I'll go off and I'll start talking to other people. Now I'm disturbing them and wasting their time as well as wasting my time. I'm just not settling to the task. That's not very productive. Whereas things that are playing to my strengths, I'm just focused in on it. I'm just doing it. The time just zooms past. I don't notice that, is it lunchtime already? Where's all that time gone? And it's pretty obvious as an employer, as someone who runs his own business, I want people to be doing that second thing, that want to be just, totally absorbed and enjoying what they're doing, rather than people who are going, do I really have to do this? And finding lots of displacement activity to avoid it. It really is that simple. It's matching people up to these different things. And like most businesses, I mean, the Gallup organisation, for instance, the research that's talked about in this book, the Gallup organisation found that 80% of people, 4 out of 5 at work, are not playing very much to their strengths at all. So it doesn't take much rearranging. So what we did, again, being very simple about things, we got a load of these books. We put all these books into reception and we said, there were free books in reception. Turns out, again, that was another brilliant masterstroke. I didn't realise at the time, but free anything. Everyone goes and grabs them very quickly. So now everyone's got these. Not everyone's a book reader, but the best thing about this book is you don't have to read it. It's got a scratch code in the back cover, and you can scratch that off and you go and do the online assessment, the Strengths Finder assessment. It tells you what your top 5 strengths are. What's not to like about that? An assessment that only tells you 5 good things about you. That's really good. So they're my things up on the screen there. Compared to most of these assessments, isn't it, psychometric assessments where you've got the good and the bad, and of course all the focus ends up on the bad, doesn't it? You go, oh, that's very nice, and oh no, that's horrible, oh. And then of course that's what everyone wants to talk about, the bits they can improve you on. Whereas this, we just want to know what the good is and try and see if we can line people up with that. And things started happening rather strangely and rapidly in the business as a result of this. For one, people started talking about this stuff. You couldn't go anywhere within the office without bumping into people who were talking about what their strengths were. They were very proud of them. They were comparing notes. This was costing me £5 a book for this HR intervention, and it was entirely self-sustaining. We didn't have any professionals involved in this whatsoever. In parallel with it, I was using Kathy from Happy on the back of the EI training to run some dialogue sessions, as I was calling them, with my leadership team, the people that were basically the frontline managers within the business, without me there. So it was only a peer group of frontline managers, and once a quarter they were spending time with Kathy, and that was when we put these books out there. They were running one of the sessions. So they came back from one of these sessions, and I got a deputation, which is always slightly unnerving. And they said, we're going to talk to you about something, Clive. And I went, this doesn't sound good. Because I was still in the mindset that, you know, business problems in the business were going to be my problem to solve. So deputations I was rather nervous of in those days. And they said, this strength stuff, we've been talking about this Kathy Day, and we think some of us aren't playing to our strengths. Okay, right, fair enough. So we want to change jobs. Okay, this is going to be interesting for me. But we've talked about it and we've worked out which jobs which people need to be in. So we've sorted that all out, and they told me who wanted to be in which jobs and why. And it was fantastic. All the people who were struggling in their roles were now putting themselves in roles which it looked to me like they would probably do much better in. And certainly they couldn't be any worse than they were in the current roles they were in. So you know all these things that HR people talk about, you know, we want our line managers to have more difficult conversations. This just all self-resolved it. This was all the difficult conversations we hadn't been having. They just self-resolved themselves in one go. And what was even better, so I agreed that, yes, they could do that, and we'd do an announcement in a few days' time. And what was even better was on the day of the announcement, I got another deputation, which, again, I thought, oh, no, it's all going to be up in the air and everything's off. And they said, no, we want to tell everyone about this because it's our decision to do it. It's our thing. So I had this strange out-of-body experience standing at the back with everyone else in the business, listening to the leadership team, explaining to everyone the roles that they were changing and why they were changing it. And, you know, I hadn't done anything. All I'd done was bought some books and allowed them to go off for a day and have a chat with someone where I wasn't going to know what they said. And this all just sorted itself out. And as I say, this 3-month period from the books to there tripled our profitability. And it just stayed up there. And the customer service was fantastic, and suddenly a really big turning point for us. When I talk about strengths, some people worry about that's playing to your strengths. Oh, you can't let everyone just do what they like to do all the time. No one's going to do any work, are they? It's just going to be like that. That's what I think playing to your strengths looks like. Because how many people really are going to want to sit there with their feet up for days and days on end? You'd be pretty bored. In fact, probably the worst job you can ever have is working for a company that's struggling. It doesn't have any work for its people. And you have to come in the office every day and there's nothing to do. If anyone's ever been in that situation, it's absolutely awful, isn't it? This is what people like. People like a challenge. Different people's challenges will look different. I'm sure there aren't many mad ice climbers in the room. But if you can find the challenge at work that fits with your strengths, you'll just do it. You don't need any managing. You don't need any carrots. You don't need any sticks. You don't need any of that stuff. It just happens of its own accord. So if we can get that match, we get lots of magic to happen. That had big implications for the way we recruited people. So in the past, we'd recruited good engineers, lots and lots of technical questions in our recruitment, focusing on did they have the skills, had they done this kind of thing before, could they do the kind of computer programming we needed and the engineering we needed. We've completely changed that now. We have this model here where we have strengths, attitude and skills. Skills are completely optional. It's nice if we can find people with the right skills, but if we can't find them, we can train them up. They've got to have the right attitude, they've got to have that customer service attitude, they've got to want to help other people, absolutely key. Very easy for us to test for that. People come to us for kind of an assessment, half day, and at the end of it, we simply ask them, why do you want to work for Cougar Automation? And you get two kinds of answers. You get one answer, which is simply, I think I can do some really good work for you, you'll give me some interesting projects, I'll be able to add some real value to your customers. Yawn, yawn, yawn. Or you get people who are literally bouncing up and down in their seats saying, everything you stand for is amazing. I really want to work for a company like yours. Give me this job. I really need to have this job. You can just tell the difference. So that is very easy to recruit for. Strengths was harder, but we've got much, much better at that now. And it's finding that fit. What is the magic set of ingredients in a person's DNA that means that they can do the role that we're bringing them in for? And when you get that right, you get the attitude right, it doesn't really matter about the skills. We've brought people in who've never done any engineering in their life, haven't got an engineering qualification, and suddenly within 18 months to 2 years, I can think of specific people who are better than people with 10, 15 years experience in the industry. Much better. I can think of one young lad who came in, and within that kind of time frame, he was being approached by all the older people in the business, people in their 40s and things, with lots and lots of experience, asking for his help, completely upside down on its head kind of stuff. It's getting the strength stuff, the attitude right, the skills will take care of themselves. This slide's an interesting example of this kind of stuff. David McLeod, the employee engagement chap, did the report for government, and he's now set up Engage for Success. To try, employee engagement is really important. I completely agree with everything David says about that, except for the fact that he says you have to spend money doing it. This is his slide. I nicked it. I saw him presenting a number of years ago, and he was using this slide to say this is why it's really important to have employee engagement. Otherwise, you'll get quality of work like this. The guy couldn't be bothered to stop his truck, move the log, and do the white line in a straight line down the side of the road. And so he's using this as an example of why you need to invest money, spend money to engage your employees. And I was sitting there in the audience listening to David going, yeah, I completely agree that you need to have someone engaged, but I don't think it needs to cost you a penny. You just need to have the right person sitting in the truck. And to recruit the right person doesn't cost any more than recruiting the wrong person. We all know people that are kind of a bit OCD, that like everything to be nice, straight, neat, tidy. Yeah, anyone know anyone like that? Yeah? Oh, you're like that. Okay, great. Could you have done that? No. Thank you. Couldn't possibly have done that. You'd have to stop the truck. You'd have to move the log. You couldn't possibly do that. So first of all, one of the strengths you want for someone to paint straight white lines down the road, nice parallel white lines, is to have someone who wants everything to be straight and perpendicular and neat and all the rest of it. So that's the first thing to look for. You probably want someone who, I'm guessing you sit alone in your cab a lot of the time, so someone who's quite happy being on their own, driving down the open road. I know there are people that are like that, so there's another thing you're going to be looking for, listening to the radio. Imagine if you got someone like that who's really content, driving his truck, and every day he can come home and he can say, wow, I did some fantastic parallel lines today. They were really good. They were nice and straight and exactly the right distance. I remember someone who he used to have a game. He was one of these people, drive for work, a lot sales, and he used to have a game that when he overtook, he didn't hit the cat's eyes in the dotted lines on the motorway without bumping on them. That kind of mentality, and you can just be amused forever doing this kind of thing. And it doesn't cost a penny more. But what do we do for jobs like this? We just say, oh, where's someone who's got the relevant truck license that we can hire for the least amount of money, and that sort of, doesn't seem to be a bad person. And we'll stick them in the truck, and then we wonder why we get this kind of quality of results. So strengths was really, really central to everything we did. Another really big part of it was the last bit we had in our vision was eliminate all waste. Now, some people can get a bit worried about this because it can sound a bit like this. Charlie Chaplin in modern times, you know, we're just turning people into actually parts of the machine itself. This was obviously for the manufacturing era this film was made, when he was saying that people were being dehumanized by this kind of industrial work. I must say during my career, it's felt like actually knowledge work and service work has gone much more like that as well, and we've dehumanized it. In the name of eliminating waste and efficiency and all that kind of thing. And I don't think that's necessary at all, and it's certainly not the way we've found to do it, because we came across people who talked about what this chap had talked about in the past. Anyone recognise this guy? Deming. He's W. Edwards Deming. He is the guy who is he's an American who the Americans found a bit troublesome, so they sent him to Japan after the end of the Second World War, and then they found that turned out to be even more troublesome because what he did in Japan meant the Japanese industry decimated the US manufacturing sector in the 80s. So it was a bad move for them sending him over there. There's an Emperor's Medal awarded in his name in Japan now. And there's some strange things that are kind of said to be connected with him as well, like, well, what's ISO 9001 now, used to be BS 5750, you know, quality stuff. Oh, that's horrible and boring and straitjackets and everything. People say that's because of him. No, it's a travesty. He'd be spinning in his grave about the kind of stuff that's being done in the name of that. Another one is lean coming out of Japan. Again, that seems to be a packaging up by management consultants of some tricks and ideas. But it's not what he was talking about. He talks about setting people free to do great work that they enjoy doing and putting people in charge of what they're doing. So following some of the things that he said, we've learned a lot of things. So one of the things we've learned is we have this concept of big and small. We want to be a big company because that gives us big presence in the marketplace, both with our customers and with our suppliers and all sorts of things that are good about that. But at the same time, I know, because I used to be on the customer side of the fence with this, that in our kind of industry, you get a much better service from a small company. Typically, our sort of projects never need more than 5 people working on them, often less than that. If you go to a company with 5 or 6 people, owner-managed company, you'll get fantastic service. They'll probably do the job on time. They'll be cheaper. It'll be great. Go to a big company like us, and it's probably going to be lousy. So how do we have those two things together? So we've organised ourselves so the business actually is lots of tiny little businesses, all sort of stacked up within each other like sort of Russian dolls, if you like. And the things that we do overall at the company level are very, very few indeed. And we make sure that all the decisions, can it be done by the individual? If not by the individual, maybe the team of about 5 people they're in. If not the team of 5 people, maybe the office. We've got 6 offices around the country. Maybe the office can have complete control over it. The things that come up to the level that the business has to decide on it are very, very few. And often, when they do bubble up to that level, usually we push them back down again and say, no, we don't need a company-wide approach to this. It can be done at the local level. But people wonder, well, how on earth do you coordinate anything? How do you make it all work? And I think this is the example. This is what we use internally, which are these sort of amazing displays you see from flocks of starlings and other birds and things like that. They've got no overall control. There's no sort of chief executive officer bird saying, this is what we're going to do. Apparently all they're doing is they're just keeping the distance right between their near neighbours. So they've got a few birds around them, and all they do is keep that distance. And it's just the same within businesses. Even if you're enormous businesses, most work can be done by a handful of people. Most real work gets done in very small groups. Often businesses chop it up so that actually it's people who are completely disconnected with each other and no one can see the bigger picture. If you can bring bits of work together so that people have control over it and they know what they're doing and they can see the quality in what they're doing and other people are pulling that work for them and asking for it, then actually it all controls itself and you don't need some person at the top controlling the whole thing. It's certainly what we've found. So there's very little need in Cougar Automation now to manage the business. What we've done is we've set up an architecture that is very well aligned to what our customers need from us, and our customers' experience is basically working with tiny little companies, even though they've got a big company sitting behind it. So they know the individuals sell their own work, they do all the after-sales support. The whole thing is done as if it was just tiny little small companies. but the whole thing coordinates in a big way as well. We don't have sort of turf wars between different parts of it. Some things we have to do at a big level, and we've created a thing called the company council for that, which is absolutely brilliant. I said, you know, deputations are one of the things that I used to worry about, because it meant I had to make a decision. And if you make a decision, all you're going to do is upset lots of people probably. This is fantastic, because if someone comes up with an idea now, they feed it into the company council. It's a goldfish bowl kind of setup. And the leadership team have to sit around the outside and listen to the company councillors who are elected within the cats within the business and not allowed to say anything. The leadership team can't say a word in this meeting. It's about a 4-hour meeting, and we just have to sit there absolutely silent and listen to the topics that are being put forward by anyone in the business being debated. And then later on, the leadership team respond to all of that. We have a leadership team meeting and we respond to all of that. And it's absolutely fantastic, because in the past, someone would come up with an idea and say, Clive, I think we should do this, that, or the other. And I'd think, no, that's not a very good idea. But if I tell them that, oh, it's just going to be pouring water on everything, and that's not very good, is it? And so maybe I should sort of try and do it a bit, but I don't really believe in it. And that's awful managing like that. Whereas this is fantastic. Goes to the company council, and they start going, oh, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Oh, and then someone says, well, what about this? And everyone else goes, oh, yeah, you're right, actually, it wouldn't work here, would it? No, that's a rubbish idea, we shouldn't do it. So all the things that I would have said are a rubbish idea all get knocked on the head. And I don't have to knock them on the head, it's everyone's peers knocking it on the head. Similarly, the handful of things that are great ideas that I would wholeheartedly support pretty well invariably come through that. So you could say that, you know, yeah, I would have made the same decisions, but actually it's now everyone else making the decisions rather than me doing it, which means that everyone buys into it, and it allows us to get rid of these sort of little local things that aren't really going to do us any good. So I suspect there's a lot of HR people in the room, given the nature of the conference. So a question that's come up several times is, now that Cougar Automation has grown to the size that it has, shouldn't we have an HR function? I'm an HR over my dead body kind of person. Because I think managing people belongs in the teams. It shouldn't be a separate function. That just takes away the ability for people to manage and to learn about managing. And that's come up about 3 times now to the company council. Every time it's being soundly knocked on the head. After an initial bit of scary discussion along the lines of, oh, well, maybe now we're growing a bit. And then suddenly it all turns the other way. And everyone at the end is saying, it's not something we want to do. Said a bit about recruitment. One other quick thing about recruitment is growth through stars. So we found, so this is Deming, this is systems thinking. He gets us to think about how things are connected. Why do we recruit people that aren't really as good as we would like? We realise that what happens is when we're recruiting people to fill a job, because we have a job, we need it done now, we've maybe won some more projects, we need some more people, we recruit, we inevitably compromise our recruitment standards. Because you need someone now to do the job. So we have a policy now which is we don't ever recruit to fill jobs. What we do is if we ever find anyone who's great, we just bring them into the business. And if we've got great people in the business, we're a project kind of business, so this suits us. If we find great people, they usually bring great work with them actually, because they've got relationships with other customers. And even if they haven't got relationships with other customers, just the fact that you've got someone great and you can put them on projects, it probably increases the volume of work you're going to get from a different customer anyway. So we don't recruit anymore to fill particular posts. We just, when we find great people, we just bring them into the business. Another big challenge we had was, that says role change, not promotion. We have a lot of engineers. We have project managers who are essentially the team leaders for the engineers. Naturally enough, bright engineers who want to get promoted. And we always used to say, as most companies would, I think, you're promoted to being a project manager. But we want people to play to their strengths. And most people we've found don't have the strengths. Most engineers don't have the strengths to be great project managers. There's a few key ingredients that they're missing. So we simply changed the wording from, we never talk about promotion now, we talk about role change. And the other thing we've done is we've changed the pay grade system to a kind of a martial art coloured belt system that's the same for everyone, and you can progress up and down that no matter what role you're in. So there's no such thing as promotion now, you just change roles. And actually, if you're an engineer and you become a project manager and then you find it's not working out for you, it's easy for you to go back again, because when you change role, you just stay on the same belt. Which also makes it better, because in the past, when we promoted engineers to be project managers, usually the very next thing that would happen is they were upset because they got such a small pay rise because they thought project managers would be paid more than they were. So it's knocked that on the head. Targets as well. This is something that Deming rails about a lot, and I could go on it at great length. I used to get very upset when people would go over budget on projects and things like that. I mean, really upset. Deming explains why targets are a waste of time. I completely agree with him now, and I'm completely cool about people going over budget, because sometimes stuff just happens and you go over budget. We measure lots of things. Sometimes when I say we don't do targets, people think we don't measure anything. So we measure loads of things, and again, this is how Deming would want it to be shown. Things go up and down. So this is a team performance, this is real data out of the business. This is a project team, and its profitability has gone up and down like a yo-yo, because some projects are harder to do than others, and estimating is very, very difficult to do. There's no point when it's at a low point going and giving them a hard time, because they're just the same good people trying just as hard as when it's at a high point and they're making loads of money for the business. It's the average that matters for us, and we want enough different teams that are delivering a consistent good average overall, and they cancel each other out. So all of these things that we did were basically because we wanted to deliver great customer service, and we set out at the start to say it was going to be 10 out of 10 customer service. Now, I showed you at the start what we did out of 7 out of 10. It went up quickly over a few years and stayed there. Really, the final thing to say is that even though we initially thought it was going to be almost impossible to get customers in our industry to give us 10 out of 10s, it has steadily climbed year on year, and this year we've got to the point where it's more than half of people are giving us 10 out of 10. Whereas we started off 13 years ago where more than half of people were giving us 6 or less. So it's been an absolute complete turnaround. So the customers are happy. People in the business are really, really happy. It's a profitable business, and it's gone to the extent that I've worked myself completely out of a job now, which is absolutely fantastic. It's so easy to run the business now, it runs itself. So I think we're pretty well out of time. If anyone's got any quick question they want to ask, I'll be happy to answer. But you probably want to go and get a drink.
So just interested in your engineers, and how do you recognise? I mean, how do you give them that sort of? How do you give them that sort of promotion without a promotion, if you like? How do you recognise them for that extra skill and ability and contribution they make?
They go up the belt system.
Okay.
So that's open to everyone. So whatever role you're in, you go up through the belt system. That's determined by the team leader, and we basically have a policy that says that people can leave their team whenever they want to if they've got another team to go to. So it's a bit like a market. So if someone's in a team and they don't think that they're being recognised for their skills, they can just find a team that does want their skills, and they just vote with their feet. And that sounds a bit like people are going to be churning around like mad everywhere. But of course, it's the very fact that it's there actually means the system will sort itself out, and we get very little turnover between teams.
I was interested in your example of the young guy who within a couple of years the older guys were asking him about. So how would he be higher on that belt, or would he still be?
Yes, no, Steph shot up through. I mean, you know, in the old days we would never have promoted him at the speed up through the pay grades. In fact, we used to only have 3 pay grades, so it was really, really hard to get a promotion, because like over a 40-year career, this is why we went to the coloured belts, over a 40-year career, you could get 2 promotions. So yeah, Steph, I mean, 2 years in, he was being paid very large amount, and he's been with us for, I don't know, 10 years now, and he's probably one of our highest paid engineers in the business.
Right. Yeah. That sounds great, thank you.
Yeah.
What gave you the personal strength to make that leap of faith that you made right at the beginning?
Depends which was the leap of faith that you saw there.
To work on the fact that you play to people's strengths.
Okay.
All the things you talked about tend to buck the trend of traditional thinking, and I guess that takes a bit of balls to do it.
I didn't do anything that I thought was difficult, that I felt was difficult. So my strengths are things I like. Ideas, I like strategic things, so I see how things fit together. I quite like change. I like things to be the best that they possibly can. So that all kind of played. But everything we did was little things. So I've just talked about 13 years, or the bulk of the change probably happened in 5 or 6 years. So it sounds like, oh my goodness, this is some great big revolution. And of course, if I'd just woken up one day and said, oh, we're going to do this, and walk in and do it, it would have been ridiculous, and I would never have done it. If I went back now to my former self 15 years ago and said the things I believe in now to myself in the past, you'd think I was completely nuts. But we all went on a journey together, and I was learning as I went, so no individual thing seemed bad. So the strengths thing, you know, Kathy, who I respected because she was doing this great EI training and came from this fantastic company, Happy, she introduced me to a book which I thought, oh yeah, that seems like I can see there's some sense in that, and I put some free books out there. And then next thing, things started happening, which actually seemed sensible. It got problem people out of roles where it wasn't working. So nothing really felt like a big problem at the time. You know, maybe one of the most scary things was we were at a conference and we listened to someone from W.L. Gore talking about how they choose their own leaders in their teams. And so that evening, I was with a couple of my people that had been at the conference as well, listening to this, and we're having a curry, and they said, so when are you going to do that then, Clive? 3 months later, we had that in place. Everyone chooses their own leaders within the business.
What's next?
What's next? What? For the business, I think that's what I'm pleased about, is we've got a kind of an underlying philosophy which shouldn't really change now. But people are doing amazing things within the business, and that's for them to do it now. My strengths are kind of creating that underlying thing. That's why I've kind of backed off from the business. I've now got the exalted title of non-executive chairman, so I've sort of bowed out of day-to-day running of the business. So there are people who are better at doing that. Otherwise, I'd just be trying to meddle with the underlying stuff, which doesn't want any meddling with it now. So the business, I think, is just, you know, it's doing fantastically, and it'll continue to grow. Yeah, the bigger question is what next for me? Who knows?
And on that note,
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Can I just say,